Hey everyone, it's Ian, and this is part 2 of my Batman Inktober. This time we're starting off with Catwoman, and for this piece I really wanted to give her some kind of aerial movement and wanted to have the shape of her whip kind of play into the composition and really have some rhythm and flow throughout. I also pushed her leg to the foreground a little bit. I think that made it look a little bit more dynamic and 3D, and put in some heavy blacks to get the idea of kind of a leather texture there. This one went pretty quickly for me, and I think it turned out okay. I'm pretty happy with it. On the other hand, we have our next one, which is Poison Ivy, and this one was the one that took longer than any of the other ones that I did in this video. This one I was really excited to start. I wanted the vines and the plants to create some movement kind of similar to that whip that I had around Catwoman, but I struggled with the actual inking style a bit, especially with the leaves, and maybe it's just the organic nature of some of the plants, but it was really a big challenge for me. You can see me kind of come back with a white pen and try to correct any mistakes that I felt like I made. I did settle on coming in with the background with a really heavy black, and I wanted it to kind of have that dry brush near the top just to give it a little bit of interesting texture and help the plants and Poison Ivy stand out a little bit more. I also added in all these little tiny white spots around here. They were supposed to be kind of like spores. With it being black and white, it's a little hard to tell. It looks more like snow, but yeah, it's not one I'm super thrilled with, but it came out okay. And maybe because of that, with the next one, I went a lot more simple. This is Harley Quinn, and I wanted to make her look a little bit more like she first appeared in the comics. So I've done Harley Quinn from the animated show. I've done her more based on the Margot Robbie version from Suicide Squad. And I think both those versions look a little bit more cute. This one I wanted to look a little bit more homicidal, a little bit more intimidating, and I'm fairly happy with how it came out. It definitely is more simple and it's more comic booky, especially with that hand pushing in the foreground. Alright, the next one I was super excited to do, especially because of the season. This is Scarecrow, and I wanted to have a version of him really inspired by the new Batman Adventures design, where he looks almost more like Leatherface. There's some of Arkham Knight also thrown in there, but he looks less like a scarecrow than like a corpse almost. And it was really fun to draw, especially the noose and the hay coming out of his hat there. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I think he looks really creepy. Next up we have TwoFace, and this is a kind of composition you see with TwoFace a lot, which is straight down the middle, and it makes sense because of that duality that TwoFace has. Unfortunately, because of that and trying to get all those elements of both those faces in, this is something that you see a lot, and the challenge is to make it look interesting and not like everything else maybe you've seen of TwoFace before. So really I think a lot of that comes in with the suit and the design of his scarring on his face. So I wanted to kind of play with some of the lines on his suit and with some of the dots on his tie. The scarring I usually put on TwoFace is actually that acid dripping down his face, and it's a very visceral image, but because of the way he got those scars, I like showing the scarring dripping down his face and traveling down his face. It's a little bit different take than I've seen others have, but I think it helps me feel like I distinguish it a little bit. Again, it's maybe not the most original, but I think it's very striking, and I'm really happy actually with how this one turned out. And next up we have Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze has had a lot of cool costumes throughout the years and various incarnations. I based mine primarily on Mike Mignola's design for the animated series. I also threw a little bit of his take from Arkham City in there, and there's actually a statue by Sideshow Collectibles that I really liked, and with all those together I kind of combined them into my own Mr. Freeze costume. Now sometimes with his costumes, like in the Batman and Robin with Arnold Schwarzenegger, you will see the suit is maybe it's really ornate, it's a little overdone, and there are a lot of other designs that, to my taste, is just a little too much. So I wanted to streamline it a little bit, and a lot of the suits that I was mentioning did a really good job of that. They are strong design-wise, but they're not too overdone. I think they look great. I also put in some snow in the back here, kind of like I did with Poison Ivy, but this one is actually supposed to be snow. So yeah, I think this one came out kind of cool. I like the metal sheen that he has going too. And next up we have Riddler, and Riddler is one of my favorite villains. I don't find him very sympathetic. He's kind of a horrible person. He doesn't have like a huge major illness like some of the other characters do. I mean, he does a little bit, but he's mostly just kind of a dick. And he's one of the few characters that I really just like seeing Batman beat up. And yeah, so I really like the Riddler. Anyways, so with this, I really wanted him to look smug, and I wanted to play off some of the negative space. I didn't want it to get too heavy with detail. Tim Sale does really cool negative space in Long Halloween with the Riddler, and I wanted to kind of do a take on that, and I think it looked pretty cool design-wise near the end. This is another one I'm really happy with how it turned out. And last up for this video, we have Penguin, and Penguin is another character that looks vastly different depending on what version of Batman you're watching or reading. I wanted to throw in some different elements from various Penguin, just like I did with some of the other characters that I've drawn in this Inktober. Posture-wise, I wanted to kind of go with the Tim Burton and Danny DeVito Penguin. I also kind of threw in that tie that he has there, and his vest are very reminiscent of Batman Returns. But I did want him to look very classic, and one of the things I did do was actually cut down a little bit on his nose. Many times it's really, really prominent. It's like sticking out there like a straight up carrot. And I wanted it to look slightly more realistic. It's definitely pointed and hooked and very bird-like, but I wanted it to look a little bit more natural and not as cartoony. I'm really, really, really happy with how this one came out. I think it is a pretty solid piece. And hey, with that, we're done with another Batman Inktober video. Like many Inktober's in the past, I am running behind, so I'm going to have to play catch up. Same with the videos, I'm going to have to play catch up as well. And hopefully that'll get a lot of content out before the end of October here. So I do want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like the video, if you could give it a like, and if you aren't subscribed, I would really, really appreciate it if you could subscribe. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.